Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Contact Lost. Today, I will be your host, and I'm Joker. And along with me, the new or the old and new uh, suspect from our team, Vitalis.
Hello, guys.
And today, we're going to dive into the World Eaters Codex, the newest released from GDubs, and we're going to be doing this looking at all sorts of reviews and bits and bobs from YouTube's and all that kind of stuff. So you don't really have a functional working PDF, or we don't actually have the book to hand. But I think we've managed to grab most of the information that is available.
No
Because
suggestions, no suggestions to GW, but you know.
yeah, we wouldn't mind receiving preview copies before release. Anyway, I think we've found most of it because there isn't much, and this could be a sign of new times coming. I mean, I think it's no secret that this is probably the last codex of this edition, and it's heavily hinted that I would assume at Warhammer Fest we're going to see the 10th edition previewed. And with that in mind, Vitalis, what are your initial thoughts about the book?
Yeah, like you mentioned, so you can definitely feel that something is in the air with the new World Eaters because the Codex is it's old. Old with old rules suited to ninth edition, but there is something off, and you can definitely feel it. So, like you said, yeah, it's definitely written with 10th edition in mind.
Yep. However, even with that in mind, we are here to deliver you the usual review that we do. So we're not going to go into all of the things that are in. We're probably just going to focus on things that stand out most, that are highlights, and that could see the hit tables competitively in tournaments and see if they can fight for top spots. So first up, we've got the detachment abilities, straight up. So the Legion trait or the army-wide rule is that at the start of the fight phase, if a unit made a charge, was charged, heroically intervened, add +1 to strength and attacks of models in that unit until the end of turn. Uh,
Basically, it's just the shock assault on steroids.
yeah, combined with the Mark of Corn, I think. So
With
yeah, the
already
effect from
16. Yeah.
CSM. So no surprises really. Do you recall if this is something that was in that mini codex in the White Dwarf that was released earlier?
I would have to go and grab my white dwarf because I have some on the shelf, but actually I haven't even played the index version at all. So I don't think it's changed a lot. There was something with charging and strength before. I'm not sure about bonus attacks.
All right. Well, anyway, I think it's an okay boost for a combat army, and especially that strength bit, because whilst the units usually have quite a lot of attacks, strength is not always that high. So I think, as you'll find out later in the review or when you have the book in hand, the thresholds for strength 7, 8, they're not so easy to come by, and
Yeah, especially 8. It's
yeah,
gonna be a
exactly.
major hiccup for the World Eaters.
Yeah, so definitely that strength boost is nice to have. And then we have the other army-wide rule, which is the blood type, which I think is a pretty cool mechanic. And I also think this is actually really good, as in it's quite strong. So why don't you walk us through it?
Yeah, so basically, the blood type is whenever a unit dies on the battlefield, and the important thing is that it does not specify enemy or friendly, because Korn does not give an F about who dies as long as the blood flows. You get a type point, blood type point. And at the end of each phase, when someone dies, you can spend those points to get army-wide buffs. And basically, not only they're army-wide, but they're permanent. So once, well, maybe aside from one of those, but we'll get to that. So once you trigger that buff, you still have it. And the buffs are, like you mentioned, really, really strong and really flexible. Because there is feel no pain against mortals, there is feel no pain against everything but wars. There are +1 to hits, +1 to charge rolls, exploding sixes, improved AP, and auto wounds. So you can have your World Eaters work like Imperial Guard, where everything is auto wounding on sixes. Yeah, and the one that is not permanent, well, it is of sorts, is the one where you resurrect Aggram. So that is, on the first glance, that's really strong and really interesting, because other thing is that there's nothing forbidding you from resurrecting Aggram as well as I understood it. There's nothing forbidding you from resurrecting Aggram multiple times. So as long as the blood flows, Aggram will be still there.
Yep, exactly. I also don't think there are any restrictions that you can only do it once per game. And yeah, so
well, basically, everyone aside from the resurrection is restricted, so you can only get them once per game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've managed to actually watch a couple of preview games on YouTube where people have featured the World Eaters, and I'm pretty sure that on average you could rank up like 20 blood type points across the game. So it's not like you're going to struggle for these points, like Vitalis said. So you can really reliably get off some of these upgrades. And seriously, I don't think that any of these effects are like bad that you would just discard them and never consider them in your games. So I think that's really that mechanic. They've really managed to hit the nail on the head there. And
hitting the nail in the head in context of World Eaters.
Hitting the butcher nail in the head. Yeah, and all that. There's also another thing you can do with the blood type points, and that, but we'll get to that when we discuss the missions. And spoiler alert: the secondaries for World Eaters are actually ridiculously good.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that, I think, later on. So up next, we've got what we got.
We've got Army of Renown that is not called Army of Renown anymore.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I think that's like another sign of 10th, because it kind of is an army of renown, isn't it? But
it is basically 100% an Army of Renown, and
yeah,
myself, I love them. So yeah.
But then it's also kind of like a different faction completely, because
True.
they have separate stratagems. Whilst with Army of Renowns, you'd usually just have like a bunch of additional stratagems.
No, actually, well, oh yeah, additional. You're right.
Yeah,
sorry.
and these are completely like they're explicit. I mean, you don't get the standard World Eater stratagems if you opt for Disciples of the Red Angel. So you've got also unique warlord traits, although. No, I don't think there aren't warlord
There
traits,
aren't
because you
any
need to
warlord
take
traits.
Angron,
Yes,
who
exactly.
has to be a warlord. So that would be Fucho, because you can't buy additional warlord traits in this book. But you have unique relics, and you can't take the World Eaters ones. And I think that's that. So stratagems and relics, different
Actually,
from
there is one very missed opportunity from GW here, because like you mentioned, their stratagems are split into two groups: the World Eaters and the Disciples of the Red Angel. And I think they are pretty weirdly spread, because maybe let's talk first about the Disciples of the Red Angel. What is there, and what do you have to take? So the important thing is that you can only take Angron, Corn Demons, and World Eaters Land Raiders. Yeah, that's interesting. As a transport for the 8-bound. And you specifically can take Land Raiders, but you cannot pop a stratagem for smoke screens on those Land Raiders. So there are some really weird interactions in that Disciples of the Red Angels faction.
Yeah, exactly. However, what you do get, because there are obviously restrictions, so you need to have some benefits to make you consider taking them. So 8-bound units gain objective secured, and I don't know if you know how is it written, but does that mean exalted 8-bound also gain objective secured? Is it by the keyword 8-bound, or they have
Actually,
just an exalted 8-bound keyword?
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. I missed that when we are doing our research. Also, I missed if the demonic infusion, because you also get free bonus for one of your 8-bound units. The demonic infusion where you make them even better. I also don't know if that works for the exalted ones also. So sorry, guys, we missed that in our research.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, I'm pretty sure the infusion is like for the regular 8-bound, unexalted or whatever. But I wonder what about the objective secured? I mean, it's obviously something nice to have, given you can't take your basic troops that would usually have OBSEC.
Actually, I don't think it's a big deal because if you're even gonna play Disciples of the Red Angel, you're gonna be focusing on regular 8-bound, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So that's So we started with that. Why don't we just carry on and then cover the stratagems and the relics for the Disciples of the Red Angel, and then we'll go back to regular World Eaters.
Sure.
So actually, I think that the Disciples got the better stratagems. What do you think? Would you agree with that?
Maybe the stratagems are better, but well, the disciple faction is, in my opinion, overall worse. So, well, I don't know. What I meant that okay, those stratagems are really strong at the first glance because you get, for example, +1 to wound, but then you read that it's only against unit below half strength. You get auto advance 6 inches, but then you realize there is no advance and charge. You got Demon Engine operating at full wounds, but then you realize those Demon Engines are not so good. You got 8-bound with
Greater
them.
Brass Scorpion. Surely he's coming.
Well, yeah, actually. So, all those stratagems are really strong when you look at them, and then you realize, but why?
Oh, come on. There are some really good ones. I mean, you get consolidation to make a consolidate move after something falls back from an 8-bound unit, and that's just
true.
for 1 CP. I mean, that's an amazing stratagem to have.
That's Harlequins on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. You get to turn off Overwatch, which is all right. And it might have the added effect of -1 hit in melee on that unit that you turned Overwatch on. So quite useful. And then you can ignore modifiers to charge rolls, which
That
is
one is really
useful
strong,
given you don't actually have fly here on, well, at least not on the 8-bound and the other World Eaters on foot guys.
Yes, but then we will go to the World Eaters it's themselves, and you realize they're doing the same thing, different ways, and they don't need stratagems for that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, we will get to that.
And we've got 3 different relics here. Note that it's only 3 relics, so it feels a little lackluster, but actually we'll get to judging the reduced amount of options, so to speak, in a summary at the end. So are there any standouts in the Disciples of the Red Angel relics?
Well, actually, for me, most of the relics are pretty lackluster in this codex. But I think that's the herald of change for the 10th edition. Uh, Maybe let's go through those relics. So, like you mentioned, you get three. The Burning Plate giving you +1 to saving throws and +1 to wound for the bearer. That is pretty.
I don't think it's to wound, isn't it? Just +1 wound as in your wound characteristic.
Oh, possible. Oh, yeah, possibly. I misread that. Okay, so that's even worse. So that one is, I don't know, going for the Devil Prince or something, because I don't see any other sensible bearer for that. Then you got the Soul Burner. That one's actually pretty okay if you're gonna run the Demon Prince, because that's gun for the Demon Prince that's boosted up Heavy Flamer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the School of Ungrant. So that is basically a chapter master, but for wound rolls. So you pick one unit, and they get full reroll to wounds. So I think that one is the strongest.
The bearer, as I'm reading
No,
it now.
for
The
the
bearer
school.
can reroll wound rolls against that target.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that one is also even worse. I thought it was for the one unit. So yeah, like I mentioned, those are pretty lackluster in my opinion.
If you could still take a free relic, then you could go with something. But yeah,
But you cannot.
I mean, I think what you usually look for in relics, it's really like weapons. It's mostly something that can function as a toolkit for your army, or something that gives a wider buff than just to the bearer. And well, what seems to be quite often the case in the chaos books, I feel like, is that relics and warlord traits really only benefit the character you're giving them to, and in this case, that's what
They're
we have here.
extremely selfish, yeah.
Yeah, and there's little benefit in taking these, at least I would think. I mean, I can't think of a character that would actually benefit from
No,
these
I
that
cannot
much
also.
to take, because you can't really take that much characters either,
But
especially in the disciples, because you
when
can
you
only
take
take the Lord on Juggernaut, essentially. I mean, you can take the named one, but then he can't take relics, obviously.
yes, so
And
basically
that's
you have
or a
Lord of
Demon
Juggernaut,
Prince.
you have Master of Execution, and you have a Demon Prince. So Demon Prince will take the gun or the Burning Plate, and the rest.
Actually, having wound rerolls and Demon Prince seems
He's got
okay-ish.
he's got Strength 8 anyway.
But then again, taking a Demon Prince,
Yeah,
he's a bit
exactly.
expensive. Never mind
Exactly.
that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, go on.
I just wanted to sum up that
Oh, go ahead then.
yeah, about the disciples. I think it's pretty cool idea, but the execution is not so good, because you are pretty much cutting your army options in half or even more, gaining corn demons in return. But actually, the book offers nothing for corn demons. So you're only having what the Codex for Demons is offering. Yeah, so I really don't like the disciples. I was really hyped up at the first glance of those, but then I read the rules and I'm really disappointed. I don't know
Yeah,
what's your opinion about that.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the current demons don't really offer anything that you don't already have in this book, apart from, I don't know, maybe skull
More
cannons
combat.
to keep on the no, a skull cannon to keep on the back objective. But that's the only use I can think of. Maybe a bloodthirster, but that's also a lot of
You
points.
don't need
And
a bloodthirster because you need to take Angron, and Angron can take three bloodthirsters at the same time and still win.
well, yeah, unless you take the guy with the wound cap, and then
True that.
and then Angron would be more on the receiving end. Um, Anyway, yeah, like you've said. I mean, I think there is a bit of fluff when Angron appears somewhere with a retinue of Bloodthirsters, like 8 or 12. You can't really do that here, which is
Don't
a
give me these crazy
disappointment.
ideas, please. Don't give me these crazy ideas.
But yeah, that's what we have here. And again, but I think we'll get to that as well. Actually, taking Angron doesn't feel like the best option out there
No,
in the book.
we'll
And
get to one and only option that you're gonna take in this book.
yes. So let's move on to World Eaters because that's where this guy excels. But who that guy is, I'm sure you already know, but we'll get to that later on when we discuss datasheets. Let's start with the stratagems then. So Red Butchers return, but instead of being an upgrade, permanent one for a Terminator unit, it's now a 2 CP that you can use on Terminators or A-bound to give +1 damage in the fight phase. It's pretty good. Then what? Gory Dismemberment is also quite good. For additional mortals on 6s to wound to a max of 6 on core or character. But then I think almost all relevant units have core. So it's Berserkers, it's Terminators, and I think it's A-bound have core.
I don't, yeah.
They do or they don't?
They do.
They do, exactly.
The normal ones, they have core, and the
The
exalted ones
ones
do
don't.
not. That's why I said that everyone's going to be taking normal ones anyway.
Yeah, right. And obviously there's the usual deny on a 4+. You can also fight on death with a core unit. You can heroically intervene with a core unit. And you can roll 3d6, dropping the lowest result on an icon unit. So that's Berserkers only, I think, because you can
I
give
think
icon
the
to
8 bound also got an icon.
take an icon.
I think they do, but we'll get to that in the
Let
data
us
sheet.
know.
Yeah.
As said in the disclaimer at the beginning, we don't actually have the full version of the book. So if we're missing something, we're happy to hear that something is better than we said it is or worse. And our optimism is not in place here, if there is any. Actually, I think I'm going to take back what I said earlier that the disciple ones are better. I mean, I can't really decide right now. These ones are.
Way
I
better.
don't think there's any game breaker here, but they're solid.
Also, you missed the one where the schools for the school throne where you get the blood type points. So
I
for
I
one CP.
did, but I think it's very situational because you need to kill the enemy warlord with a character.
Yeah, but as you mentioned before, you actually get like what 2 points, 2 victory points for one CP. That is also interesting interaction.
It is, yes. Yeah. So only 8 stratagems for each of the 2 sub-factions. So it's not like there's 4 pages. Like we said before, no additional warlord traits, no additional relics, no additional nothing. Just
Actually,
1 page.
there are warlock traits for the
Yeah,
World
but
Eaters.
not additional ones through a stratagem.
Yeah. You meant that? Yeah.
But as you said, World Eaters do have warlord traits, unlike the disciples, because they wouldn't be able to take one. But we said that already. Then again, the warlord traits here also aren't too interesting.
They are not. It's also worth mentioning that there's one interesting mechanic that wasn't present in any other codexes from 9th edition. That the named characters got their own unique warlord traits. Because up to today, when you had a named character, it had to have assigned one of the existing warlord traits. And in this case, they have their own. So that's why
Written on their data sheets.
Yes, exactly. So that's why. Well, even though there is actually one pretty interesting warlord trait for the World Eaters, meaning favorite of Corn, which just gives you 1 blood point in each of your command phases. Because the rest are lackluster. It's halving damage and 6 inches heroic intervention, so waste of CP for that. But they are still losing to the warlord traits that your name characters has on their datasheets.
Yeah, we'll get to the obvious winner here, and then we have again just the 3 relics. I think the Talisman of Rage that you give auto wounds and 6s to hit in melee on a core unit with a 9 in the command phase. That's okay-ish.
That's okay, yeah. And also, actually, all of those 3 are not terrible. They're maybe not shining, but not terrible. -1 to wound for your character is not bad. Pretty hefty, hefty Berserker Glaive. That has strength up to 8. Yeah, up to 8. -2 AP, 2 damage, and double exploding 6s. It's also not terrible on your Master of Executions. And like you mentioned, Talisman of Rage, giving auto wounds, pretty solid with the number of attacks that World Eaters have.
Yeah, and especially taking into account what we've mentioned before, where you won't have too much strength 7, strength 8 attacks. So obviously that can mitigate somewhat trying to bring down something that has toughness 7 or higher. That leads us quite swiftly on to the secondaries, and these I mean, I think that you will quite often take all 3 of these faction-specific ones as in the right situation, or well, in almost any situation, they can get you to that 40-point mark fairly easily. So we have Blood for the Blood God, aptly named, which just scores you 1 VP for each enemy unit destroyed in melee. During the battle round, or 2 for monster character vehicle, provided no units from your army fell back.
Yeah, and this caps at 4 VP per battle round. So if you're not tabled and you're not tabling too fast, actually that's going to be a no-brainer because it plays right into your game plan anyway. So you're trying to kill enemy with melee attacks. So I think that's going to be taken 100% of the time.
Yep. Although this is probably one of the worst ones that's actually here. So the next one's Blood God Stew, and at the end of each player's turn, you score 1 point for each objective marker that had 1+ non-vehicle units destroyed that started the turn in range of the objective marker. So you really need to read this to the end, because it doesn't have to be a unit standing on an objective marker. It could be an enemy unit that started your opponent's turn on a objective marker and then charge into your ranks. And if you kill them, you get a point as well.
Interesting interaction is also that from wording we have, it means that your unit can start a turn at the objective marker, charge something,
and
just
die.
suicide, die, and you get points.
Yeah, so it works both ways. And that's also a pretty good one. And the last one's Powder Skulls, where you can, at the end of each battle round, after buying any blessings of the Blood God, you can discard up to 3 Blood type points, and you get 2 victory points for each point discarded, to a max of 5 per round. So I think this is also super solid.
No-brainer. Only situation what I can think of when you will not take it is when I don't know, your opponent's list consists of something that you need to counter with your blood type blessings, like, I don't know, heavy mortal spam, strength 8, you need to cap very fast. But that's the only very edge case situation.
Yeah, but still, given how many of those points you can rack up, because you usually are going to have quite a number of units, I think, playing World Eaters, you can still make work with those buffs, and then having some points to spare to exchange.
True, actually, you only need 9 points to cap it.
Yep, exactly. And this brings us to data sheets. Like I said, guys, this is quite a short book, and that means that we are covering this quite quickly. It's not going to take ages to get through that because there also aren't that many data sheets, which I think is a bit of a disappointment. What do you say?
Uh, well, it's Thousand Suns all over again, I think, because
Hmm.
the only codex that I mean from the Great Four, and we still don't have the codex for the Emperor's Children that had like full range of units was the Death Guard. Uh, because the Thousand Suns also had like I don't know three, four, or five specific units.
When
Uh,
they first came out at the uh, end of seventh, they had you had Magnus, the sorcerers, Araman, that's three, Terminators, Rubrics, Zango,
yeah,
six
so
units.
it's similar in here. In many cases here we'll just send you to the Chaos Space Marines Codex.
Actually, we would, if not for the fact that you can't actually take that many units
Yeah, I
from.
mean I meant that
Yeah.
they have the same data sheets.
Yeah. But I'm a bit disappointed that actually so little from the Chaos Space Marines book made it through. I mean, I could in a way understand that for 1,000 Suns because lore reasons they're quite specific.
Hmm.
But then these guys, they're just super crazy Chaos Space Marines. Are they
Yeah,
that different?
I think the GW was trying to not water it down too much. So I get where you're coming from. So basically, everyone can become Blood Mud and Slaughterer. But if you include so many things from the Chaos Space Marines Codex, it would just water down to combat Chaos Space Marines on some steroids. I think that's my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Although I still think that Raptors, bikers at least.
Yeah, the fast attack slots are, let's say, disappointing.
Non-existent. Um. Anyway, okay. So, without getting ahead of ourselves, let's go into the data sheets. There are, I think, 6 HQ choices or something like that. You've got Karn, but he's not great. I mean, he's a beat stick, but at the end, his betrayer rule has now changed that at the end of each fight phase, he'd use 2 mortal wounds to a friendly unit within
Yeah,
3.
it's your role for that. So that's pretty for from the lore reasons. That's really stupid because Karn was always portrayed as a guy who just slashes his gore child and does not care who he hits. But he was slashing it towards his enemy and just not caring. Right now, he's portrayed as a guy who wants to kill something and he does not care who he is. There are no enemies. Oh, I will just slack you, my battle brother.
It's more like he intentionally just is
Yeah,
mainly
exactly.
killing your guys rather than the
Exactly.
enemies.
And from the game perspective, that's also worse because right now, when you just run to the enemy, Karn gets so impatient that for the turn or two, he's gonna smack your own guys.
Exactly. And then we have a demon prince, so a standard guest in the chaos books. We have a master of executions here in the HQ slots. Not really sure why, but I guess there's more competition in elites, so maybe it's better for him. Not that you'd consider
That's
taking that guy too often.
also weird because right now you have slots for the elite characters.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Exactly. So he actually wouldn't have any competition there, rather than at the HQ slot. And I think now we can get to the star of this book, which is the named Lord on
Let's
Juggernaut, Lord
Yeah.
Invocatus.
Yeah, so that's why we were teasing this guy from the start of this episode, I think. but he's pretty much outclassing everything, every other choice that you can get as a warlord. And that's because of his crazy, unique warlord trait. So at the start of the first battle round, you can just pick 2 World Eaters core units and move them, and just move them. And not only that, but you also are getting an aura, getting +2 to move their movement. So I don't know about you, but for me, that's in the army where you need to get in your face. That's pretty much winning.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add here, the +2 movement aura, he shares that with the regular Lord and Juggernaut. But yeah, the Warlord trait, as you said, is unique, and obviously it's great. I mean, if you get to go first, this just immensely helps you build up momentum because you're moving this guy and 2 other units. Well, he can they make
That's
a
me.
normal move. So if it's 8 bound, for example, affected by this guy's aura, they're moving 11 inches before the game, and then another inches in your first turn. So that's 22 inches of movement. I mean, you're getting into combat one way or another,
Yeah.
probably hitting screens, but still racking up blood type from the beginning. And this guy also has a magic juggernaut that flies or jumps really high or runs super fast, uh, which makes him that much better than a regular guy as well. So he has the cavalry keyword, of course, but because of fly, he obviously can make his way around terrain much easier than your standard juggernauts. And he's also got a magic axe that ignores invulnerable saves.
Yeah, so I think that's as a side note, that's the only weapon that ignores invul saves in the whole book. So another benefit of taking that guy.
Yep. I honestly think this guy's an auto include. He's appearing in every list.
Yeah, because your game plan is very simple. You need to get to your enemy, and that's the best thing in this book that can help you realize that plan.
Yeah, and even if you're taking Angron as well, so the situation where he has to be a warlord, Invocatus is 35 points more expensive than a regular lord, and is faster, has fly, has a better weapon, and a better armor save. So even in that situation, he's your go-to guy, I think, almost always.
Definitely.
Moving on from the HQs, we have 2 troops choices. Obviously, Corn Berserkers. They get an interesting new ability called the Blood Surge. So if a model dies after resolving an enemy unit's shooting attacks, they can move d6 towards the closest enemy unit. And with that move, they can get into engagement range.
Yeah, that is very strong in my book because, like we mentioned seconds ago, that's another thing that pushes you towards the enemy. And actually, it's pretty interesting because, on the one hand, you want to take the berserkers in MSU for racking up the points, the blood points, and on the other hand, you want to take them as 10-man squads so they don't die before moving. So really, really interesting mechanic for me.
I mean, I think you're best off just doing a bit of mix, like take one 10-man unit and then go for a couple of fives. Because I think, regardless of how many you can take, you can only take one Eviscerator, which is what's getting you to Strength 8, AP4, 2 damage.
Actually, it's 1 in 5. So
1 and 5. So
yeah,
okay,
so
so
in
it's not
10-man unit, you got 2 of those.
you take 2, yeah, and you can take one and for 1 and 5 you can take a plasma pistol, um, whatever.
Whatever, exactly. You're not
Uh,
aiming to shoot anyone.
Yeah, and then you have a World Eaters version of cultists called the Jackals, which are quite interesting, but they're still cultists, so squishy. I think they're 7 points per model, which
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
them
exactly.
a little bit expensive. They have a little bit of. They can dish out some damage though, but
Uh, they can, but they're hitting on force, so that's the first thing that comes to your mind. So half of those damages, half of those attacks are already missing. But in an army where you want your units to die, yeah, I think they are pretty fine.
but there are units that are cheaper and die more easily potentially. So even then, I'm not sure they're
Actually,
good
which one do
choice.
you need? Do you have
The
in
chaos
mind?
spawn, it's cheaper.
Oh
I'm not
yeah,
sure it dies that much easier, but it's cheaper
true that, true that.
and serves that purpose equally well.
Wow, you actually managed to get a roll for the first attack in this book.
Yeah,
I'm really proud of you because I could not think of a shit for that.
I mean, there's only one choice in the book, but it's a solid one. It's a solid one. It has its role. But back to the jackals. They have the usual restrictions, so you can only take like one jackal unit per one berserker unit, or per one butcher Astartes infantry, or something like that. So either berserkers or termies, or maybe 8 bout even. You know the drill. And then we have elites. So we've got termies. So they are 1 point cheaper, I think, than the Chaos Space Marine ones.
Yeah, exactly.
They have +1 attack, but unlike the CSM ones, you actually need to pay for upgrades. Is that right? I think it is.
Uh, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it is. It is.
Okay.
If you look at the page with the
Ah, okay.
points
Yeah, you're
cost,
right. You're right. You're right.
yeah, all the weapons they cost something. So that's a bit of a bummer. And then you can't give them transhipment here, but I still think Terminators are actually quite interesting. They have core, so they can benefit from most, if not all, of the stratagems. They can also move faster with your Invocatus guy, and they can pack a punch. And with a +1 damage and AP 3, or you can easily get it to like AP 4 on their accursed weapons. They're a solid choice.
I think the mentioned accursed the mentioned accursed weapon are actually the best choice for them. Maybe you will take one fist or something like that, because with the amount of attacks you're getting, +1 from just being the war leaders, +1 from getting charged or charging,
And +1
possibly
for the weapon.
yeah, +1 for the weapon, possibly +1 uh, from the blood points, getting additional AP from the blood points, getting additional auto wounds from the blood points. They are looking pretty scary, even with the simple accursed weapon.
Yeah, especially if you pop that +1 damage on them.
Yeah, yeah,
Then they can
that's another thing.
they could really put in some work here. So definitely, I think a unit that's worth considering. Then we have Hellbro. He's pretty standard, but also one of the few options for shooting that you have in this army.
Yeah, but again, you have to pay for his guns. So if you're gonna take a halberd, possibly he's gonna be taken with the melee attacks options, I think.
Yep, you can also do that, and then it sports, I think, almost 10 attacks if you take the Power Scourge thingy. But I haven't, I don't think I've seen that unit in this edition at all. But well, maybe someone
We'll
can,
see.
maybe he can find a place here. I'm not sure, but let's not cross them out too early. And then we have the new units of 8 bound in 2 flavors. So you've got these guys are pretty much World Eaters possessed, but you can only take them. The regular ones, it's a unit of 3 to 6 guys, and then the Exoto ones is just 3 dudes, always. So starting with the regular guys, they do have pretty much a possessed stat line, right? So it's 9 movement, toughness 5, 3 wounds for attacks, 5 up invulnerable, 3 up save. They also give -1 leadership and aura, just like possessed do, I think.
Yes, yes.
They do, however, have Strength 6 base and AP 3 on their weapons that give an extra attack as well. So yeah, they've got a lot more punch than your
Actually,
usually possessed.
they get a pair of those weapons, and if each of them is giving an extra attack. So the basic 8 bound is 6 attacks, 6 strength, -3 to damage. They are really hard hitting guys.
Yeah, so they're neat. And remember that Red Butchers also works on them, so you can up that to 3 damage, and these are starting to look really solid.
Yeah, and also they got one ability that can really make them a 8 bound star of the game, meaning the Blood Scent. The Blood Scent lets them arrive 1 turn earlier from reserves. So basically, you can get those guys in reserves for free with the Arts of Omen, and on turn 1 you just hop out 9 inches from your enemy if they're not positioned well. So that is also very very scary.
It is the only downside to this is you have almost no way of improving your 9-inch charge from that point.
Aside from the stratagem that's giving them 3d6 charge.
But do they have an icon?
Oh yeah, they don't. They don't. You're right. You're right.
Exactly. So that's that. You can get +1 to charge from Blood Type, but you're not gonna have a turn 1, and still that's an 8-inch charge. So that's mathematically unlikely. So don't base your strategies on that. It's good to have it in. It's good to have it successful, but don't get into the mindset that it's happening every time you need it.
True.
And then we have the Exalted 8 bound. So these guys have a 4-up in the roll, but you can only take them in a unit of 3, which I think I've said. They don't have the Blood Scent ability. They have a regular Deep Strike, or whatever you want to call it. They do have an aura that prevents non-vehicle units from falling back or doing actions on a 4-up.
And they're swapping one of their swords for Chain Fist. So they have actually a little less attacks, but they can. They're one of the few options that come with Strength 8 out of the box.
And then the champion can take a pair of them, which improves their damage, making them Strength 9, AP 4, 3 damage.
So, well, the biggest drawback of those guys, and of course, well, not of course, and they got improved invul. I don't know if you mentioned that. So they're saving on 4+. But the biggest drawback is they're not core, so most of the stratagems, most of the buffs won't work on them. So they're just pretty straightforward hammer unit.
Yeah, they're just a bit like a small unit of characters, right? That just goes
pretty much.
Because they also got a 2+ weapon skill, whereas your regular 8-bound have a regular 3-up.
True that.
Right, so that's the elite slot, and then the rest of the book, apart from Aggram, which we'll get to at the end, it's just a very stripped down version of Chaos Space Marines. So we've already teased the fast attack. All you get is a Chaos Spawn. And whilst you might miss your Raptors, your Bikers, and I think Warp Talons would be really good in this book.
They would be awesome.
But alas, too bad. I think taking
that
3 1-man units of spawns is something you should also always consider, because they're 3 blood type points, and also they count towards your secondary. You just put them on the objective, and then if your opponent kills them, good. If they don't, also good. 100% profit.
But hear me out about the warp tunnels and the bikers and all that stuff. Don't you think that with those amount of combat buffs, warp talons and raptors, wouldn't they be a bit too strong? Wouldn't that end with the spam of 6 units of flying guys, 3 of those?
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that could be the logic behind GW here.
Maybe. but they're not there, right? So it's like
We
no
can
need.
just
Yeah.
theorize and hope.
No point doing that. Maybe in next editions of World Eaters Codices, we will get them, or we'll get new models, new units completely. But for now, we just have the humble Chaos Spawn,
Yeah,
which
and
in almost, I think, sorry to interrupt you,
go
but
ahead.
I think in every of these like god-specific legions, the spawns are really pulling above their weight in points. I'm not sure about Death Guard, but Thousand Suns, I've used them many times,
Yeah, I
and
know. I
here
have
they
been I
also
have
have a
been
use.
on the receiving end of your response. Yeah, going to heavy support options. Basically, nothing new, nothing fancy here. You get everything as in Space Marines Codex, aside from Vindicators. So you get Defilers, you get Mauler Fiends, Four Fiends, Land Raider. Worth noting that Land Raider is with the updated stats from the new Codex, so upgraded Lascans. And actually, I'm thinking of trying it in here, just for fun and for having at least some anti-tank firepower in my list, but we'll see. Uh, for another transport option is your old good trusty Rhino. Uh, yeah, so just some transports and demon engines for the disciples of the Red Angel.
Yeah,
Uh,
and realistically, only the Mauler Fiend benefits from like the Legion trait. Oh, the Filer maybe does as well because it has some use in combat, but generally, I don't think you're taking any of these ever. Uh,
Actually, there is one also model in the flyer slot that can
oh God,
benefit.
no!
Hear me
Don't
out.
hit me with the Hell Drake. I'm not going
Hear
to.
me out. He's a combat flyer. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone would try to pull something crazy with three Helldrakes buffed up. But yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, but isn't it an aircraft? So you can now. I think they changed it from 8th, so you can only take 2 of them, and they have to start the game in
Yeah,
reserve. So they're realistically not getting into combat even on turn 2. So
uh,
it just gets from bad to worse for those guys.
true that. So you'll realistically get to combat by turn 3.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like it.
Um, but having mentioned demon engines, I think there are 2 missed opportunities here. They could have been viable if only in the HQ slot you had this guy called Lord Discordant, but he's not there to do some buffing. And
Yeah,
come on,
that would be
he
nice.
was a solid, quite solid combat choice as well, as we've seen in competitive lists in the Chaos Space Marine book. And I was really hoping for like a specific demon engine for the World Eaters. I mean, I know you have the Forge World ones, but they like they big guys, and you have the Lord of Skulls. So okay, I guess I just have to put up with those.
Yeah, but again, wouldn't that be just watered down Space Marines Codex, Chaos Space Marines Codex? Because you're basically saying everything that is playing in the CSM.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe that was the way to make this book somewhat unique.
I think so. That was the idea.
All right, and then we have in the Lord of War slot, the aforementioned Lord of Skulls, but he's like the same as he is in the Space Marine book, but
Yeah,
the big man himself, the Red
the Red
Angel,
Angel.
Angry Ron.
Yeah, so this guy is really big, and the only downside from ever taking him 100% of the games is the Lord Invocatus. Uh, because this guy is a really big sledgehammer unit. So 16 inches of flying movement, strength 9, toughness 7, 80 wounds, 2 plus armor, 4 plus invul, and whooping 12 attacks just like that. Yeah, that sounds scary even without the rest of his rules.
Yeah, and it's actually strength 10, 13 attacks base first round of combat, but he doesn't hit that sweet strength 16 spot to wound toughness 8 on 2s,
True that.
which is a bit weird, to be honest. Because I mean, come on, even Magnus has strength 16 in
Well,
combat. So
actually, he does with the blood type, because that's strength 9 +1 for the trait, +1 from the blood type, and +5 from the weapon. So that's
wait,
exactly 16.
but there isn't any +1 to strength from the blood
There's
type.
there's
Now you
not.
can get +1 to hit. You can improve the
Oh,
AP, so he could be AP 6 if you ever
oh,
need
right,
it.
right. You're definitely
Fuck
right.
those Grey Knight Paladins under their spell and then heavy cover, I guess.
Actually, sorry guys, I was sure because there's pretty much everything in the blood types, +1 to everything. So I was
Just not
sure
that.
there is, yeah, I was sure there is +1 to strength also hidden in there.
Yeah. So he's quite crazy, but not that crazy. But also crazy because you can also change those 13 attacks into 39 sweep attacks at strength 9, AP 3. So yeah,
And you
he's
thought,
killy. He's
and
quite
you
killy.
thought Night Rampager was doing a lot of attacks.
Uh, yeah, but unlike the Night Rampagers, you don't actually have to invest like your whole roster into pulling that combo
Into that
off.
combo, yeah, he just get it out of the box.
Yeah, exactly. He has your usual chapter master ability, so rerolls to hit on a core or character. He also has a warlord trait. Unlike Magnus and Mortarion, he doesn't have three of them. He doesn't have just three out of the book. He has one specific. He's unique one, which causes an enemy unit within 6, or actually it's an aura, so all enemy units within 6 inches lose objective secured, which I think is quite alright, although he's still only one model, so
Yeah,
he's not making that much use of it on his own.
possibly another hint towards 10th edition. Maybe monsters will count as something more right now. I
Yeah,
don't
like
know.
in Sigmar, you wish. I wish too, because I like playing with monsters, but yeah. We'll see if that comes. And then he's got Wrathful Presence, which lets you pick one of 3 different auras for each command phase to activate. And that's +1 attack for World Eaters core within 6 inches. Rerolling hit rolls of 1 for World Eaters units within 6 inches. Is that units or is it core as well?
I think that's units. So
Okay,
that can be crazy strong if that's true. But again,
not bad.
GW, please give us some goods so we can, you know.
Yeah, be more reliable in these.
Reviews.
Because you could actually pull off screenshots from YouTube, and now they're all just reading it out. Crazy stuff. Never mind that. And the third one is, I think, the best one, which stops units within 6 inches from falling back.
Yeah, so basically, I see him as a distraction / hammer unit. So I think the third one will be taken most of the time because you just send this guy and he kills everything. He dies, he comes back, he kills everything again, buying some time for the rest of your army to arrive.
Yeah. Although I think I'm not totally sold on Aggram, to be honest. Obviously because of Lord Vitalis, as we've said before. I mean, you could punish an opponent that deploys badly with that falling back prohibition. So you can easily pull off a turn 1 charge with this guy, kill something, and then consolidate into something different, and then he's safe because something can't fall back
You
from
cannot fall
him.
back.
Yeah, but then your opponent's still free to shoot like all your other army, and they're not that resilient.
Yeah, I think also he's a bit of a missed opportunity. But on the other hand, those rules capture his character pretty nicely. So he does not care; he just kills.
Okay, so we've actually, despite what I said at the beginning, looks like we've covered the whole book because, as we said before, there isn't that much. But before we go into a summary of sorts, Vitalis, have you toyed in making some lists for the World Eaters?
Yeah, actually, I have been already tinkering with them. And like I mentioned somewhere around of Berserkers, where we were talking about Berserkers before, I have two lists in mind for now. So one of those is, of course, the Invocatus, some MSU of 8-bound, 2 to 3, maybe 4 if I squeeze those units of 8-bound, ordinary ones, and a whole lot of just Berserkers and Jackals. Just to rack up those points really fast and to go with the orky green tide style, but it's going to be red tide this time. So the game plan for that one is really, you can already guess, just run, utilize the Berserker's additional speed, and hope for the best to catch the enemy before he shoots most of my guys. And of course, the Jackals for keeping some backfield objectives safe, as they even, like we mentioned, if you're lucky, they may not evaporate from some deep strike and maybe kill one or two models that's going to contest them. And the another one that I had in mind is a bit more, I think, let's call it elite, where it's very heavy on the 8-bound. Like 2 big squads of the ordinary ones in Land Raiders and supported by some Berserkers in Rhinos. So to maybe have less of them of the units, but make them a little faster. And also the Land Raiders and the Rhinos with the Meltas, Last Cannons, give me at least some reasonable shooting, not just the bolt pistols that the Berserkers are carrying. And of course, also the Lord Invocatus, because he's just crazy bastard. Probably you noticed none of those even considers Angron. Like we mentioned, he's good. I cannot say he's bad, but he's good. But he's losing overall picture with other things in the book, especially that you cannot take additional warlord trait, because that one stratagem could change his position entirely, because you would not have to sacrifice anything else to take Angron.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get us wrong, the guy's an absolute beatstick, but I don't think he does much for the rest of the army, and a toughness 7, 18 wound guy isn't all that resilient, even if he's coming back from your blood type. It's only on the 8 wounds, he starts bracketed, and he still needs to make an 8-inch charge at best. Maybe in some circumstances it's 7 if you use one of those stratagems we mentioned and manage to kill the enemy's warlord, but like, let's be honest, that's not going to happen that often for Angron to make use. So as much as I like Demon Primarchs, I'm not sure he's something to include.
I think he'll share the Magnus's fate of just collecting dust on the shelves, because the model is awesome, but then again, you'll just buy it to have him in the collection.
After the Thousand Suns book came out, I've used Magnus literally once, and since then he's been sitting in the box. And it's just sad.
I played against him once. I erased him turn 2, I think, after he cast some spells that did pretty much nothing. And
Yes.
that was my experience with Magnus in this edition.
Hopefully there's a better fate for Angron. He's a little bit cheaper as well. So fingers crossed for that guy. But in terms of lists, I particularly like the list that's been drafted by Anthony Vanella and been heard on Gunhammer. So that's basically just almost maximum of A bound, 2 rhinos, 3 spawns, singular ones, Invocatus, and then 5 units of 5 berserkers. That's 2,000 points on the nose. I haven't had the time to actually tinker too much myself. I think I would consider maybe squeezing Terminators in there, like I've said before when we were going through the data sheets. But now that I think of it, they serve pretty much the same function as units that are already there. So like A-bound, pretty much like Zergs, and I don't know if there's any point into adding them as
Pretty much
well.
everything in the codex saves the
Yeah,
same purpose.
exactly.
It's really one-dimensional.
It's very
codex.
one-dimensional. Yeah, it's very one-dimensional.
I
It's
think
just running and trying to spank your enemy in melee.
Yeah, I think most of the list will consist of pretty much the same things, either be Terminators or A-bound. I think the biggest difference between the list will be amount of firepower that you will try to squeeze in, because that's the only thing that comes to my mind when you can differentiate the lists in World Eaters Codex.
Yeah, but I mean, from lists I've seen also flying around on the Polish Discord, they're pretty much the same as that list I mentioned. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of variety in terms of competitive lists for World Eaters. What I wanted to say though is I would perhaps consider adding 2 War Dog Executioners, maybe, if you'd squeeze the points in just for that shooting support. But I'm not sure if they don't eat too much of your army points wise. But maybe something to consider. It could probably help.
True that.
I
forgot about those guys.
It might help in singles play, but I don't know if it's necessary in teams, because this, as we've said before, this is an army that has a really good secondary game. So I think it'll find its use in tournaments, especially team ones, like I said.
True.
So, Vitalis, we wanted to talk about this. So what do you think about the book in general? Is it a sign of new times?
I really, at the first glance, I was really disappointed. Meaning, what the hell? Only 3 relics, only 3 warlord traits, 8 stratagems. What on earth is that? First of all, I will try to not mention the new rumors that are flying on the internet right now. That came like a day or 2 ago. So I was really disappointed about the amount of stuff that is in that book. But then again, when you realize that, hey, I can learn pretty much all the tricks in the codex in like half an hour, just know what is what, that's pretty awesome. And I think if that's the herald of the change of getting rid of the rules bolt that we currently have, that is pretty good change. Even though I'm a bit afraid of coming back to, I think it was 5th edition, where your codexes were really limited. You can only take units in 5 or all that stuff. But I don't think we're back there yet, and hopefully we'll never be. So yeah, I really like the style of this codex, of the reduced amount of rules we have. Maybe not reduced amount of data sheets, because that's where the variety is really good, usually. Yeah, so that's me.
I kind of agree. I mean, I was initially disappointed as well, but like I said, I've actually gone through a couple of YouTube videos since the actually it's not even released, is it? It was just
Next week.
pre-order weekend.
Yeah, it's next week.
Yeah, regardless. And most of the people have been actually, uh, you know, psyched about this book, uh, for the reasons that you just stated. And however, as usual, my feelings are a bit mixed on this, because whilst I can definitely agree that the majority of the rules that are there, you'd eventually at least come to ignore, because there's usually just that one go-to option that's just the best. It's the most optimal. But sometimes there had been people that came up with something unique, or not something that you'd see at first glance going through a book, or that required a little bit of a more specific play style to actually utilize. And this reduction in rules kind of kills that aspect of list building, is where I'm going with this. Because having a very small amount of relic, removing essentially sub factions as a thing after essentially introducing them into every faction during 8th and ninth, uh, I'm not fully sold on that one, especially given that we're still in ninth. So that book seems really, like it's like they left half of the book in the printer
Uh,
compared to all the previous releases, of course.
that's possibly, well, it's hard to judge this book because, as you are speaking right now, I want to say that possibly there are some really fancy interactions with the 10th edition rules in this book, but it's hard to judge it because we don't know those rules yet, and we will not know them for like almost half a year from now. Uh, or no, it's actually 4 months for if the leaks are right.
Leaks
But
say June, so yeah,
yeah,
for
so 4 months.
months.
Anyway, uh, yeah, it's hard to judge because you see that this book is different. You see it's written with something else in mind, but you're still judging it through the rules of current edition. So
That's true.
yeah, but getting back to your concern about cutting the sub factions, relics, and all that stuff, uh, I agree, and I don't agree at the same time. I agree because, like you mentioned, sometimes people find some crazy combos and they work. But I don't agree because, like 3/3 of those, like 75% of those relics of those factions were written just to be there. When I had my flink with a dev guard, I actually never learned the sub factions there because you were playing only one, and the rest were so irrelevant that you never learned them. If Twig was here, best possibly he would be able to to confirm that or deny that. Maybe I'm just a noob in DG, but well. How many of the examples where you even don't care about half of the rules
I
are?
think he wouldn't agree with you, because he was always the guy that would try and look for value into all the different factions and things they offered. So, when Tyranids played Leviathan Warriors, or before that they played heavy behem- behemoth monsters. Uh, Actually, I don't know how to pronounce that word in English. Um, he would look at, I know, say your Mundgard and what they're called, gaunts, the little shits.
Yeah,
so, so I think he won't be the happiest person,
true,
uh,
true, maybe true.
if this is the direction we go to. But I also think if this is a sign of the times, this obviously being the World Eaters book, looks like we're in for another evolution rather than a revolution with a new edition. What would
That's
be your take on that?
well, so we have to elaborate on the newer leaks, I guess. Uh,
No, no,
Again,
no, no. Let's discard
okay,
them because
okay.
I
So
think that if we're taking this book as like a preview of the new edition, then those leaks don't really they don't actually
then again, if they would
sink
release,
in that well.
I know what you mean, but again, how many of this book will be changed when the new edition comes? We don't know. So
That's true.
even if they have a revolution in mind, not an evolution, they just could not include those things in this book because it came up 4 months before the new edition. So it's like I said, it's really in a weird spot right now. It's hard to judge. It's hard to know what to think of it, what to do with it.
Yep, yep. Well, we'll just have to wait and see.
Exactly.
I think this concludes our review of the World Eaters book. So, guys, let us know what you think about it and what you think about the incoming 10th edition that this book is obviously a herald of. And I think that's it from us. I'm not going to shout blood for the blood because everyone else in the house is sleeping already.
Blood
But
for the blood god.
okay, there you have it.
I had to do
Thank
it.
you for
Sorry.
that and for your insights, Vitalis. It was a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here, mate, as always.
And as usual, if you like what we do, give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, share with friends, do all that jazz, and because it helps us grow. And we really need the encouragement right now because if you're following, you've surely seen the memo from Tweak that he's left us essentially, and there's just the two of us now trying to keep this ball rolling.
We miss you, mate.
We'll cut it out because we don't want to be softies here, especially not discussing World Eaters. Uh, so that was that. I was Joker, and thanks for tuning in. Until next time, bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.